Hi, everybody. Welcome to the August meeting of the Bike Walk Commission. I'm the chair, Tanner Thompson. We are going to hit the ground running today. Our agenda is out of order a little bit compared to normal. I'm going to start by turning the time over to Garrett, who has an introduction to make.
Oh, fantastic. Good evening, everyone. So before I introduce FHI, our consultant that's here tonight, I just wanted to take this opportunity to provide a brief introduction. This is a really and incredibly exciting time for the city. I definitely want to recognize all of the Bike Walk Commission's efforts to get us to this point. I'm sorry? I definitely want to recognize.
Go ahead.
Okay. Apologies. So I just definitely want to recognize all the work that the Bike Walk has done to get us to this point. And then I also wanted to recognize the support of the mayor, the administration, and the council to really move this Complete Streets initiative, which you're going to be hearing a lot more about forward. We'll be the 13th city or town in the state to adopt a policy and ordinance and to come up with this design and implementation guide. So when you think of Connecticut, there's just a small fraction of towns that have made that commitment. So I think it really puts Norwalk out front, and it's something that we should certainly be proud of. And as far as I know, in regards to Complete Streets, we are the community that is investing the most money into this process. And I think after tonight, you'll have a better understanding of why. I truly do believe that our consultant that we have before you tonight is going to help us create the most robust Complete Streets ordinance and policy, one that towns will emulate, and then also award-winning design and implementation guide. So we are really overjoyed to have FHI join us tonight. They've already taken us through some significant first steps in the process, doing some policy review and looking at best practices. I just want to reiterate, we're really early on in the process, but they're going to share a lot of what you have to look forward to over the coming months and the next few seasons. But I'll let FHI take it away from here.
Great, thanks, Garrett. Good evening, everyone. Garrett is setting a high bar for us, which is great. We love it. I just introduced myself, Mike Morehouse, and I work for FHI Studio. My background is a transportation engineer, but I'm kind of firmly rooted in the planning world and have been really working, on Complete Streets projects for, well, pretty much most of my 30-year career. It wasn't always called Complete Streets, but it was always had a focus on bicycle, pedestrian, safety, just trying to make streets more accommodating for all users. Joined by Hannah Brockhouse, also from our shop, and she's really helping me kind of lead the day-to-day of this project, which is very intense, a lot of activities going on. And NV5, who aren't represented on this call tonight, are also part of our team. So I'm going to jump into it. I know we don't have a lot of time, and I know that you probably have a lot of questions. So I have a very brief presentation tonight, which I will share. And if you all hopefully can see that.
Yep.
Okay. And if there's any audience that probably has a good foundation for Complete Streets, it's Bike Walk Commission. So I'm not going to get too deep into the, what is Complete Streets 101. But I do want to give a little bit of just discussion about what our particular role is and what we're trying to deliver for the city. The only slide that will really be background is this one, because I think it's important to understand that, when we view Complete Streets, we really view the entire right of way. This includes, the frontage area with the transition between where the public right of way and private property begins, the pedestrian realm, which is your sidewalk and whatever amenity zone you might have, and then the curbside spaces, which host a range of different users, potentially bicycles, or of course bicycles, but could also be used for parking. It could be used for temporary facilities like parklets or streeteries. Could be delivery vehicles. So the curbside space is very important. And then of course the throughway, which is mostly the auto carrying portion of the street. But of course, when we think about it from a Complete Streets context, That's the part you want to get right, because you want to make sure it's done safely and with an emphasis on slow vehicle movements. So this is what we're thinking about: the trees, the building faces, the shy zones, what happens adjacent to the street, as well as what happens on the street. And I think that's important for Norwalk. You have a lot of old roads, and very limited space in some areas, and in some areas ample space. And so we're going to have to tailor the approach to design and maintenance of those roads according to what users are on the roads and how much available space there is to do this stuff. So our project is really focused on these 4 areas. I'm not going to get into the policy, but the policy really is that framework, that legal framework for we're Norwalk. We're going to do business a little bit differently. We're going to think about a more broad array of goals. It's not going to be just car carrying capacity. It's going to be safety and equity and economic development and how materials look and the quality environment and health. So there's a lot of different things that kind of filter into the policy. But the design guide I'm going to touch on briefly, because that's kind of the tool that allows practitioners, whether they be city designers or consultants that work for developers, to say that this is how we expect our streets to be designed. An integration plan, which is, okay, now that we've got this policy that says we should do it this way, and we've got a design manual that says here's how you do it, how does it really work on a day-to-day level? Lots of different departments, agencies, commissions within the city, private, public, and they need to, this all has to figure out how this all happens on a day-to-day basis. So there's gonna be a lot of communication needed to get this right. And then of course we have an engagement component, of which tonight is part of, but we'll share a little bit more of what we're thinking about from an engagement perspective. So the design guide. Right now we're in the process of inventorying all of Norwalk's streets and looking at different contexts. And what I mean by context is really, what is the environment like? What's the road? How does the road currently get used? How should it get used in the future? And what's the land use around it like? What are the user types that predominantly use the road? So we're thinking about that. And then we're going to develop a set of typologies. This is just an example from another complete streets plan that we did. But these typologies aren't meant to be prescriptive. What they're meant to show is, for any given typology that we identify in Norwalk, what's possible on the street, how the design should be approached. And it gives a range of different ways to do that, but it's not a actual, this is how you should design it. That's still left to the planners and the engineers in the town, and of course, driven by public involvement and feedback from your commission, as well as the public at large. But what each one of these typologies will have associated with it is guidance. And so there'll be a series of dimensions, preferred as well as mins and maxes. And it will talk about the types of design tools for each of those zones that I talked about in that first slide. So, what is absolutely, a priority in the frontage zone, in the pedestrian realm, and in the curbside. What's required, what's discouraged. And then what I like about it too is we often put a list of other considerations off to the side that will differentiate why some streets might, things you have to think about as you're designing. For example, if it's a truck route, there might be some exceptions that need to be made to make sure that trucks can safely make certain turns. Or for example, if it's a part of a bicycle network, we're going to want to make sure that there's an emphasis placed on the connectivity and the safety of and the quality of the bicycle infrastructure. So this is where we can kind of get a little bit into the specifics of the different types of streets. But we think that based on our initial canvassing of streets, there's probably going to be anywhere between 9 and 11 distinct typologies. And that's important because right now what the city has to work with is basically 3. There's 4 if you include interstates and limited access freeways, but we can't really do complete streets on those, so just ignore that. But what we're talking about are the arterials, the collectors, and the local roads. And that's what this design manual is going to focus on and give much more nuanced definition to how these streets get laid out. And then finally, the integration plan, you know, the day-to-day. We've been interviewing virtually all the departments or many of the departments within the city to understand how they do things on a day-to-day level, where Complete Streets plays into their workflow, and how we can provide triggers that make them everybody think about, okay, when do we need to accommodate or think about working Complete Streets in? Who do we have to talk to, and all of that. So that collaboration is super critical. As I said, this whole thing is really about mobilizing leadership from the top down to think differently about how roads get programmed and ultimately built. But it also requires strong relationships with other agencies and commissions and just general community building, because this doesn't work in a vacuum. Everybody has to be really part of it. So on to the engagement, and I'll only take a couple more minutes, but I think this is probably going to be the focus of some of our discussion. We do have a demonstration project scheduled for this project. We've been doing demonstration projects now for several years. They become more popular and actually written into lots of work scopes for projects we do now because of the popularity and the effectiveness, quite frankly, of them. What a demonstration project is it takes a location and uses, you know, inexpensive and temporary materials to trial something, to see how it works. And part of the success of these demonstration projects is the participatory environment that, you know, that it fosters. So getting members of the community, business owners, people, advocates to actually help install the demonstration project goes a long way to building ownership, right? And we want the thing to be permanent. So it's important to get people out to actually, you know, help us install it and then test its effectiveness. So one of the streets, we looked at a number of streets and we worked with transportation and parking to, you know, winnow down a large number. We talked with the planning, the planning group, and we said, okay, like out of these three different alternatives, which one do you think, you know, makes the most sense? And we selected a intersection along North Main Street, just south of the intersection with MLK. This is a little bit rotated, maybe not how you're used to seeing it, but north is to the left of your screen. And this intersection in the middle is North Main and Ann Street. And this one was picked for several reasons. We think it checks a lot of the boxes for what we're trying to do. It's in a kind of a commercial environment with a lot of pedestrian activity. It's in a, what we call like I'll just call it an environmental justice zone, but it's really an area where a lot of people walk, a lot of people low income or minority. So there's a lot of sensitivities from on the user groups. Oftentimes those who must walk or bike or use transit to get around. There's an active bus stop on the one of the corners. And there's also a real opportunity. We see a intersection that's relatively large, or at least larger than it needs to be. We see a missing crosswalk on one leg, on the southbound leg of the intersection right here. There's on-street parking. It's surrounded by some active land uses. So we thought that this was a really interesting location to start with, because this will be the city's first demonstration project. And you want to pick a location that's challenging, but also one that you think will be successful, because this is something that could be replicated in many, many locations throughout the city if it is successful. On Thursday, we're going to be walking the entire corridor from Washington Street all the way up to MLK intersection. And we're going to be focused on the experience. What is it like to walk the street? How does it feel to cross the street? What's it like if you have a disability and you need some sort of mobility device to help you cross the street? Is it cooler under trees? Is it hotter? Like all the things that you think about, that you think about if you're walking the street, but you might not think about if you're just driving through. So I think it'll be a really interesting walk tour, and we're going to focus a little bit on the intersection following the walk tour at a meeting location where we can then kind of dive into the details. And this isn't a finished product. This is a little bit, think of it almost like a blank canvas. In this bluish color, we did sort of mark out the areas that we think we can reclaim, the pavement that could be reclaimed for a number of different things. This right turn lane, and we're still evaluating the need for that right turn lane. But if that was, blocked out, there is a bus stop there. There could be potentially a bus platform constructed. This section over here on the other side of the road, again, is relatively unused. It spans 2 on-street parking strips, and there are restaurants literally on every quadrant of this intersection. So there are things such as parklets or streeteries that can be inexpensively constructed using pallets, plywood, AstroTurf planters, things like that, which could activate this area. And we could actually, if we can get the city to close traffic for a period of time, we can actually paint the entire intersection, maybe even complete one of the crosswalks, perhaps put a mural in the center, but something to draw attention to the intersection, give it some prominence, and just make it a little bit better for pedestrians to walk around and sit and use the space. So we haven't decided the types of materials and treatments and things that actually have to go in the space, but we think this is a starting point for our conversation, and love to hear more from you on this particular project and your interest in supporting it. And the final 2 slides are just about schedule. First off, this isn't the kind of demonstration project like a tactical urbanism project where we're going to run out and quickly do it without a whole lot of forethought and just see if it works. We're actually planning it, and we're using it as an opportunity to almost trial the Complete Streets process. We went through a project identification process with TM&P and planning. We have a project in mind, and now we're in the phase where we need to design it, and that's going to include engineering and DPW. But we want to have a walkability workshop in the early stages of this process so that we can get public feedback, business owner feedback. We don't want to do anything that's going to upset a stakeholder adjacent to the property, or at least we want to make them aware of what we're doing. And then we'll have some more public input on the design. We'll move into an implementation phase, which will lead to the installation. And again, we'll be recruiting local members of the community to help us with that. And then some post installation evaluation to see how it worked. Does it slow traffic? Does it make it more comfortable to walk? Does it activate the space? That kind of stuff. So that's all. That's a multi-month process that's already underway, and will culminate with an early October installation. I'm going to ask Hannah just to talk a little bit briefly about the overall time frame, because we are almost midway through, and we're working fast. So Hannah?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been gearing up towards this demonstration project, really, as Mike has been saying, kind of walking various departments through the process in order to establish buy-in to be able to kind of really build capacity for this and similar endeavors in the future. And so our meeting here tonight is not your only bite at the apple here to provide feedback on what this demonstration can look like. We're gearing up for a public workshop, which will be in about a month or a month and a half, that'll provide a larger opportunity for the public at large to provide feedback on this design. Hopefully we can get some people to sign up to volunteer, and this will also be an opportunity to provide larger education and awareness on Complete Streets as a whole. So we're really looking forward to that. And as Mike said, we'll be moving into the demonstration project shortly after that, as we get into the design guide documentation process, as you can see on the schedule. So with that, we can turn this over. I know we've probably got a lot of questions. We wanted to go through our process here and really provide as much of an overview as we could with the time that we had.
Thanks, Hannah and Mike. So first, I imagine that we have some questions and we have some feedback. Let's try and do the questions first, just questions about understanding the process, understanding the timeline, etc. Do we have any questions?
Hi, everyone. I have some questions.
Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, so I just want to understand my first question maybe, and then I'll get to the next ones. I have a few questions, but so the design is just that area for now, Ann Street and MLK. Okay. And I guess I have some questions, and I'm just gonna read my questions, and then because they kind of have the same theme. But my question would be, which groups have you already outreach to? Because this area, like you pointed out, is very diverse. And thank you, Mike and Hannah, for your presentation and for being here, and Garrett too, for inviting everybody. Yeah, and it is exciting, the complete streets for Norwalk, and it's a great city, and we have a lot to be proud of here. And, you know, in the past, there are groups that have felt further marginalized by not having a place at the table. And unfortunately, that a lot of that has, you know, it's been in the past. And it's a lot of work sometimes to bring people to the table. I understand that. So I'm curious about, you know, the process of guaranteeing the equity and a reflection of particularly South Norwalk, although it's changed quite a bit with gentrification. So that was my first question about what groups have you reached out to? I have a question about the walk. If the public's invited, like I would like to go, I'm available. I don't know the time or if we're allowed to go. And also if certain people are going to be, particularly, again, those marginalized groups, such as somebody with disability, minorities, people from that area. And let's see, I just have one more question. You use the term environmental justice, I think. Environmental justice. So I wasn't sure what that exactly meant. And then also I have a question about FHI Studios, because sometimes I'm just wondering on, you know, how you kind of make your own company, your organization diverse, how you work at that goal that we all need to do. Thank you. That was a lot.
Yeah, did you guys get all 4 of those? I think there were 4.
There were 4. I wrote them down.
All right.
Well, I'll start. I think some of them are pretty quick answers. As far as groups that we've reached out to, I assume you're talking specifically about the demonstration project and not the broader policy design manual, right? Okay. So we're just getting there right now. I mean, Garrett, you might be able to talk a little bit. I know you've been reaching out to the business owners, but we're just starting the recruitment process to figure out, you know, who's going to participate in the installation, right? That's some of it is going to be the public meeting. We're going to we're going to cast the invitations to that far and wide. We hope a lot of people show up, and we're going to encourage people to sign up for our list to install the project. But right now we're in the project identification stage, so we haven't gotten out too much. But Garrett, you've spoken to a few people, right?
Yeah, and I can tell you, Christine, we're really on in the process, but we did already reach out to several of the businesses and neighbors that are immediately adjacent to the intersection to get some of their input and to invite them to the walk. And I think we're going to, over the next few weeks or months, expand that to the entire North Main Street section. But one of the reasons why we chose this area of the city was it was very centrally located, high visibility. I think Mike talked a little bit about an economic justice area, but we thought this would be a great place to get the entirety of the community involved. So I think with each step, as we kind of fine tune the demonstration project, the location, and start to iron out some of these logistics, we're going to cast wider and wider nets until we really, as Mike said, captured everyone. And we'd hope not only everyone on this call, but the entire community would be able to actively help when we have to implement the project. We imagine we might have to close some lanes on the road, or maybe some full closures to get whatever the scope of the project ends up being implemented. So we'll need a lot of hands, and we were hoping by way of this meeting too, we could invite everyone to participate in the process.
So the second question, the public invited to the walk. Unfortunately, that's a logistical issue. We can't, we have to keep it to a relatively finite group. So just so we can manage it, there's only so many of us who can kind of lead the tour and talk over the noise and all of that. So we do have an invitation list, and I don't know, Garrett, is that list something you can share? But I don't have that list.
Yeah, so it includes many of the members of, we have a steering advisory committee that we started in the early stages of the project to provide guidance as we start to build what is the outreach program. And this is just one component of that program. But it includes several different city departments. So including DPW, the health department, economic development, planning and zoning. It includes some of those adjacent business owners. And it includes the Bike Walk Commission as well. We've extended the invitation to the Bike Walk Commission. As Mike said, it's just some logistical issues with the number of people. But as we start to kind of fine tune what can be done, this is really just like the first meeting, right? So it's really just determining the feasibility of what we can and can't do. We'll start to open those invitations and share those designs and concepts with a larger community.
So Garrett, just to clarify, you said that the Bike Walk Commission is invited. Do you mean that a representative has been invited? That's me. I got an invite. Or do you mean the entire commission is welcome to come?
A representative, and you're as chairman, feel free to, as you see fit, assign members of your commission.
Would it be all right if I brought somebody with me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then Christine, as far as I'm concerned, you're welcome to come with me as a representative from the Bike Walk Commission. I do intend to go. I think like Garrett and Mike said, for the purposes of logistics, I don't think it makes sense for the entire commission to go. But if there's maybe one other person that feels strongly about going, reach out to me and talk to me about it offline.
Great. You asked a question about environmental justice. I know that's a little bit of an inside term, but it also pertains to a law that ensures that you're including groups that have been marginalized, such as low income, limited English proficiency, our English second language speakers, minorities, people with disabilities. There's a range of groups. They don't all fall under environmental justice category according to the law, but they are vulnerable users in a lot of ways, because they do bear a lot of the brunt of the impacts from traffic violence. And so that's what basically I refer to. EJ wasn't the best term to use, but it's sort of communities of concern and people we want to protect because they have been adversely impacted by traffic. And as you know, South Norwalk is a very active area traffic wise. So a lot of the populations that I'm talking about are, do live in Norwalk, South Norwalk. So that's why, in addition to it being visible, it also kind of really, I think, includes a lot of the populations that we would really like to serve better. And then as far as FHI Studio, I think you asked how we handle diversity within our organization. And I will just say we are a women-owned organization, so a majority of the company is owned by women. Our president is African-American. We have a DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion program where we have consultants come in and work with us. We've been doing that over the last couple of years to ensure that we're addressing equity within our organization, but we're also doing a better job on the projects for the communities that we serve. So I think we've always placed a really high value on making sure that equity was part of everything we do. But what we realize is we all have blind spots, and we're striving really hard to improve all the time. So something we really are passionate about at our company.
Thanks, Mike, for all those answers. Christine, do you have any follow-up?
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Thanks so much. Tanner, I'll talk to you later about the timing and everything. But Mike, I think the reason I was asking that too, I think getting buy-in from the community, people like to know that. I think that would be helpful for the cause, to somehow make that known about your company, because people can just write it off. Oh, here they come in again, doing their thing. They don't include, they're not inclusive, So that's really why I asked the question, and how wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So at this point, we are at time. I know the FHI Studio group was, from what I understand, you guys had a hard stop at 6:30. Is that true?
I could stay if you have more time, and
Yeah, I think if you guys are available to answer a couple more questions, I did want to mention too, I forgot to mention it earlier, but we do have a website. So if you're on the city's website, you go to Transportation, Mobility, and Parking. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see a column with all our projects, and there is a Complete Streets webpage. So if there's anything that we can't get to tonight because of time, Tanner, there's a link and an email address, and it's shared with FHI as well.
Yeah.
So it's just another conduit for engagement.
Great. Let's see if we can spend a couple more minutes here. Paul, do you have a question or do you have feedback?
I have a question for the city, so Craig and Garrett, and that is the question of language in the Complete Streets document. I've written a few of them myself, and language matters. Are they going to be directives, so using shall and must when describing certain street treatments and design guides, or are they just going to be kind of, I guess, less directive?
I think I remember Mike saying that it wouldn't be prescriptive. Is that what that means, Mike?
It's going to allow flexibility. You need flexibility in design guidance. However, you know, the policy is the thing that will direct it to a degree. It's going to be more than encouraged. It's going to be, you know, this has the support of the mayor and council. And once, you know, once you get through that point, it, you know, becomes codified, right? And that means that the departments have to follow those mandates to make sure Complete Streets is part of what they do. However, the design manual itself has to be flexible enough because roads are there's so much variation, even on one road from block to block, as you know, right? So you need that flexibility. However, there will be there has to be also an exceptions or exclusions process. In some cases, Complete Streets simply can't be done in given, you know, very special circumstances. For example, if you had a narrow bridge, it would cost $5 million to replace the bridge, and there was no way to do that. So you can't get the bicycle lane in, for example. That could be something that could be an exception, right? You obviously want to limit exceptions to the extent possible, so that you know, not every project can apply for an exception, but you got to leave a little bit in there too for extenuating circumstances. And I'm sure there's lots of areas in Norwalk, because I've been working in the city for many years, and it's a twisty, hilly, narrow, you know, lots of old roads that were converted environment, and roads need to be very carefully planned. They can't all be widened. They've got stone walls, they've got trees. So so there will be a process that will allow that flexibility and in exceptions in the rare situations where something couldn't be done.
Yeah,
Paul?
Paul, I think Mike did a
Go
really
ahead,
good job explaining it, but context sensitivity is really important for the city, and it won't be entirely prescriptive, but I think it will provide a range of best practices for the city to evaluate on a project by project basis. And as Mike mentioned, if you know we are to deviate for any reason, there'll be some type of exceptions or exemptions component to it too, to justify the decision-making process. So I think Mike did a really good job summarizing it, but I hope that answers your question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, it does. I just don't want to see it get watered down, because in my past experience with doing Complete Streets, where there's not been as directive and more suggestion, it gets wishy-washy, and then it doesn't get followed, and everyone's like, well, see, it never worked, and then nothing gets done. That's all. Thank you.
Paul, would you mind just briefly, I'm not sure if you've met the FHI team before, but it might help for them to get a quick intro from you and know what your background is.
I've been a transportation planner for, God, I guess like almost 20 years now. I've worked in Massachusetts, California, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Just been around.
Thanks. And Paul's a Norwalk resident. He's been here for a few years now. And we'd love to get him on the commission, although he's not a commissioner. I wanted to open it up to a commissioner. We probably should just take one more comment, but are there any commissioners that have feedback for either the process at large or the demonstration project specifically? Ben's not a commissioner, but any commissioners, now's your chance.
I'm waiting for someone else to go, but if not, I will.
All right, it's
say
yours,
something.
Ben, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to give some feedback on the demonstration project. I think it looks really good. I'm excited to see some traffic calming get put in on Main, because it's a bit of a speedway, and it's such a great part of the city. I'd like to see it get the Washington treatment. So yeah, I'm excited to see it go up. Yeah, I didn't have anything super specific to add to that. I didn't have any really complaints. I think it looks like a good project.
Thanks,
All right,
Ben.
thanks, Ben. Well, in that case, I want to let the people who are still working at their day job go and invite you to have an excellent evening. Thanks again for presenting. Thanks for working on Complete Streets in Norwalk. Thanks for putting together the demonstration project, and I'm excited as well.
Great. Thanks, Tanner. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
Garrett, are you jumping as well, or are you going to stick around?
I apologize. I have to jump off, but you know, should you have any questions, I'm sure Greg will be able to answer them.
Great. Alrighty. Thanks, Garrett.
Thank you.
All right. On that note, I want to pivot to the agenda. I'm going to pull it up and share it really quick, just so that we're all on the same page about what we're doing tonight. So we've got several agenda items. The next one on the agenda is public comment. And I know that we have at least a few members of the public here. We've also got a discussion about Fairfield Avenue. This came up, I believe, last month, and I think Greg mentioned that TMP has some updates to share with us. There's a discussion about walk audits and East Avenue. The discussion is actually more than just East Avenue, but that's why Dr. Wendy Berkey is here from Sacred Heart. We've got some other project updates from TMP. We have some discussion items, some of which have been pulled forward from last month. And that rounds it out. So we've got plenty to cover. Dr. Berkey, do you need us to move your item up at all? What's your time flexibility?
I'm flexible. Feel free to stick with your schedule.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and stick with the schedule. So without further ado, I'll open it up for public comment. If there's anybody from the public that wants to introduce themselves, comment on matters of biking and walking in Norwalk, we invite in particular stuff that's relevant to the agenda. But if you have a short comment on something else that's related to biking and walking, we'll take that as well. But don't all jump at once. Alrighty, well, that makes that item nice and quick. I do want to say thanks to all the members of the public who have come. I see several of you. Thanks as always for coming. Moving right along to the discussion of Fairfield Avenue, I believe Greg has this one. Greg, do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, absolutely. Last meeting, obviously the Fairfield Avenue corridor had come up about some safety concerns, and I know we received a letter from a resident as well from Fairfield Avenue. So the timing of it actually worked out very well because, obviously every few weeks we meet with Public Works Department and their engineering department, and we kind of coordinate on upcoming projects, and they kind of share with us their planned projects for the next year or so based upon condition and sidewalk and for future paving program as well. In the springtime next year, 2024, DPW is slated to perform some sidewalk improvements on Fairfield Avenue between Cedar Street and Washington Street. And then it's scheduled to be paved sometime in 2025 once all that sidewalk work has been completed. So we are coordinating with DPW, and we're working on an improvement plan to kind of improve the layout of the street and transform the roadway, and look to improve walkability and traffic calming measures, and try to implement some of the complete street best practices into the corridor as well. So the timing of it is very good. TMP, we've already began collecting some of the traffic volume and speed volumes, and reviewing the crash data as well. So we're just looking at how, analyzing all that data to see if they're speeding, and how we kind of combat that, and just improve the overall layout of the street, and just, from a holistic perspective, try to improve the corridor between there. So we're working very closely with DPW to make that happen before the project goes out to bid next year.
That's great news, Greg. Thanks for updating. So you're saying that the work is slated for next year, and it'll go out to bid next year as well?
Correct. Yes, it's slated for springtime 2024.
Gotcha.
So probably more likely we'll go out over the winter time for competitive bid to award for construction.
So before it goes out to bid, you'll have at least a high level concept design.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
Like I'm just assuming this will work similarly to the most recent similar project that I saw the plans for, which was Morton and Senga right here.
Correct. Yep. And then on Spring Hill as well, where we're performing work.
Sure. This one's just very proximate, right? It's in the same neighborhood.
Yeah. So like Morton, for instance, there were no sidewalks, and we implemented sidewalks along that corridor. Fairfield has sidewalks, but they're very poor condition.
Yeah.
especially the curb line. So this is more of a sidewalk improvement project. We'll look to address that, as we, as this work goes into next year.
Gotcha. So can we anticipate being able to see those high level designs before they go out to bid, or will that be released as part of the bid?
Well, it'll be released as part of the bid. I'm not sure how DPW, because it's their project. We're just gonna coordinate with
Fair
them on how the street layout is and, how we envision the street to look like. But as far as we haven't, started putting all that together quite yet, because we're still analyzing the data and, just seeing based off of that, where we can improve it and how we can improve it, just even better than just putting new sidewalks and new curbing.
Sure. Just based on this cursory measurement here on Google Maps, it looks like the lane widths might be as much as 13 feet. I think I probably speak on behalf of the whole commission when I say that we would love to see those narrowed for purposes of traffic calming. I imagine that TMP agrees, but in case that wasn't on your radar, we'd like to see that.
Yeah. Well, when we look to do the sidewalk and curbing work, we'll have our striping plan of what we want the consistent cross section width to be. Based upon what we find. So that curb and sidewalk will be set to a consistent cross section width based upon what the striping is going to look like.
Gotcha.
But the sidewalk work will come first, and then the paving will come after.
Sure. Yeah, as is standard, right?
Standard, yes, always standard. Yep.
Good. Okay, that's all from me. Any other commissioners have questions or feedback about this item? Oh, I do want to recognize that Anthony Lima, who's in the audience, a member of the public who brought this up, says, "Thank you, Greg, for looking into this and following up DPW. It's very much appreciated." Ben Handpeter, go ahead.
I know that the road's probably too narrow for bike lanes, but even a little shoulder is better than nothing. So.
Yeah, I mean, one other thing about this street as well is it does have a pretty significant slope to it as well. So any we'll have to, any consideration, we have to, look at it as well and take into account the slope, coming from both ends. But, we always look at any bicycle infrastructure as well that we can implement into any project. So, we're gonna, heavily look at this, but we're in just the analyzing the data as far as right now. And, over the fall and over the winter, we'll work with DPW to come up with, a proposed layout for the road.
Yeah, definitely. I know that you can't always do bike lanes everywhere, but there's definitely plenty of spots where I ride where there's a shoulder and it's probably not intended as bicycle infrastructure. And I know it can't officially be labeled as such, but it's still a nicer spot to ride.
Still,
I'm very appreciative of those where I find them, for sure.
Of course, yeah, and Tanner, you pull the 26-foot cross section. If there is a 3-foot shoulder to allow, but again, we need to look at this, on a more holistic level, and also how it ties in, also what's planned, in Sono as well, into Washington Street and into Flax Hill, and also as you approach MLK Drive as well. So we're looking at this. Yes, as one corridor, but we're trying to expand upon that as a network as well, and how to expand upon into Sono and as well along MLK Drive as well. So we're kind of looking at this as all one, all one at one time.
Greg, I understand this isn't
Thanks, Greg.
strictly part of the scope of this agenda item, but since it's immediately next to it, do you know if there's any plans or even discussions or roadmaps for this intersection right here between Washington and MLK? Obviously, if there's going to be any bike infrastructure on Fairfield Ave, the users of that are going to flow right into this massive intersection.
Of course, yeah. So I mean, obviously, that looking further ahead, you have the planned development, on along Webster Lot there, and potentially, we do have the corridor, on MLK Drive as well that that's being looked at, but we don't have anything. Everything that we have right now is very high level, nothing, even conceptual or nothing that is worth, even presenting at this point, just because we don't have anything.
Sure.
But there's going to be public meetings. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for everybody to chime in and present all that.
But it sounds like what you're saying is that this intersection will get reevaluated when and only when the rest of this big project happens.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And, over the next 6 to 8 months, as we're designing it, things may start to kind of come together a little bit more. But it's too far out right now to give that, to give that kind of timeline.
Yeah, no, that's a good enough answer. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other feedback on Fairfield Ave? I feel like this is pretty straightforward. I guess we do have something else. Oh, never mind. I never closed out the Q&A. Yeah, Anthony, your hand's up. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah,
Go
so I
ahead.
just wanted to ask a question about, so one of the concerns that I raised was the heavy amount of like industrial traffic coming through here. It seems like they use it as a shortcut between MLK Boulevard and the Highway 14 exit, either going to it or coming from it. So that's a lot of the like traffic that's going really using it very frequently, and also like coming through late at night, like causing a lot of disruption, and generally driving unsafe. Is that on the table, I guess, to reduce that traffic through that corridor? And I guess like what's on the table, do you think, for the redesign?
So one thing, as far as like not allowing, no through trucks or no trucks on a specific road, that's up to the Office of the State Traffic Administration to make that determination. And it's, up to them to prohibit large vehicles. It's not up to the city to prohibit trucks such as that. As far as no through trucks, any truck that has an origin or destination inside of Norwalk, unless it's a no through truck route, has the ability to, to use any specific road, as long as they have that origin destination, and that's set by the State Traffic Authority. With its close proximity to 95, exit 14 ramp, as you said, it's a direct route into Sono, and large vehicles use this route, and if their destination is to Sono, or if they're turning onto MLK, more times than not, they're using this route. We'll look to implement traffic calming measures, sidewalk, street trees, wherever possible, to try to change the nature of the street. And the street trees will, that kind of deafens some of the noise as well coming from trucks, but we don't have the ability to not allow trucks on Fairfield Avenue. And I believe there's 8 roads, and you brought that up, Tanner, that are no through trucks.
Looks like a few more than 8, but
I'm
Fairfield
sorry,
Ave-
there's a few more. But even with the no through trucks, if you have an origin and destination inside of Norwalk, a truck can still be able to use those roads if they have a destination inside Norwalk. And as you can see, a lot of these were made, some of them 40 years ago.
Yeah, looks like most of them are from 81.
There's not many recently that have come up, but even with like I said, even a no through truck route, they're still able to use these roads if their destination's inside Norwalk.
Good to know. Thank you.
So Greg, I think I would just reiterate my comment from earlier. I think if we can narrow the lane widths down, obviously that's not a legal prohibition on truck traffic, but it is a disincentive.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And that's, like I said, we're looking at the data, and we'll take that all in consideration when we, when we implement our proposed layout of the street.
Cool. So just to make sure I'm understanding it, getting a street on this list as a no through truck route, that's a matter of state policy?
Correct. Yeah. And it's, it's up to the state. So they'll look into it, and, they'll do a, complete comprehensive look at the corridor and see if it's justified to allow no through trucks or no trucks at all. Now, the thing is, when you say no trucks means no delivery trucks, no moving trucks, no propane trucks. That's a little more of an intense process.
Sure, but as you pointed out a minute ago, it's only applies to through trucks. If your destination is Norwalk, then it doesn't make a difference. It's
Correct.
not binding, in other words.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. So it looks like, just based on my reading of this website, which is the Connecticut DOT, the local traffic authority can submit a request for a truck prohibition. Like that's the avenue by which this stuff tends to happen.
That's how the process begins, but then it's up to the OSTA, the Office of State Traffic Administration, to review and, you know, and make the determination whether or not it should or shouldn't be.
Gotcha. Well, obviously I'll leave it in your capable hands, by you, I mean, all of TMP, to decide whether this is gonna be part of the solution on Fairfield Ave, but it's good to know what the process is.
Yeah, you know, and you know, if you say, you know, if you put in and no trucks get on this road, then another street's just gonna get more trucks, you know, it's not. You know, there's still a large quantity of trucks that come through this area just with its close proximity between 95 and Sono.
Sure, I think that the point that Anthony was making though is that a lot of trucks come, for example, off of I-95 North, turn onto
Right.
Fairfield Ave and use that to cut down to MLK, when instead they could just take the highway exit right here and
Well, no, they have to get off 14.
specifically to go down Reed Street and then take a right on West Ave, right?
Exactly.
Like that's not that far out of the way, and that those are roads that are more designed for
Well,
truck.
I hate to say it, Tanner, but if their GPS tells them to go on Fairfield Avenue,
That's true.
Mr. Google,
I know that that you're not the relative expert in app routing, but I would think that the lane widths would have an impact on that, and also that if there are truck prohibitions, that would have an impact on that as well.
it will, but I mean, if we look to make the sidewalks wider, implement street trees and, you know, transform the layout, maybe those trucks that drive by aren't as loud or, you know, aren't
That's good,
going
yeah.
as fast as they are.
Yeah, so you get multiple different benefits. Anyway,
Correct.
I think we're all on the same page here. Anthony, did you have any other questions or feedback?
No, I just very happy to hear it being talked about, and the redesign is in progress. So thanks again, Greg.
Thank you, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, well then let's move on to our next agenda item. We have got the walk audits and Dr. Berkey, and I think that we're right on time. In fact, we're 1 minute ahead of schedule, which I love to see. So I'm going to introduce this briefly, and then I'll turn the time over to Dr. Berkey. Dr. Berkey is a resident of Norwalk and is a professor at Sacred Heart University. Over the last year, she's been working with a student who's since graduated on a research project looking at crash data using the Connecticut Crash Data Repository, which is maintained by the University of Connecticut. Her student did kind of an overview or a review of all the crash data on East Avenue in Norwalk, and Dr. Berkey has decided to take that work that was done and run with it and expand it a little bit more to look at more data from more parts of Norwalk, and in particular to look at how walk audits, or the actual like going through and looking at the street in person and examining it from that angle, how data from that kind of a source can be combined with data from sources like the Crash Data Repository to more holistically evaluate the safety of a street. And she invited me to be part of this process so that the commission could be a little bit more involved, and potentially so that we could join forces in conducting some of this research, especially the walk audit piece of it. So I will let Dr. Berkey fill in all the gaps that I forgot about. Go ahead.
No, great start. And thank you for having me. I will share my screen. I just have a couple of slides that provide a little bit of background relative to Sacred Heart University's interest in the built environment, in particular, our Department of Exercise Science. So let me click on share screen and give this a go.
Great.
All right, perfect. So yes, I've lived in Norwalk since 2000, and I've also been a professor at Sacred Heart since 2000 as well. And joined you all a year ago. Interestingly, probably 8 years ago, I was part of the Bike Walk Commission as a panelist when you all met in person and people would pull up to the meeting on bikes and walk to the meeting. So I remember, a former version of this group. So I'm excited to potentially continue to work with you. So with regards to Sacred Heart getting me involved in built environment research interests, I'd say the cue to action was when Mark Fenton, who is a fairly well-known researcher and promoter of built environment related data, spoke a very compelling lecture. I've seen him speak several times at our New England American College of Sports Medicine annual meeting, which we all attend. And The students attended, and it really generated a ton of interest in this topic among faculty and students. And, you know, similar to our previous presentation, we don't need to go over the specific components of built environment variables, but these are some of the things that Mark Fenton went into detail about that really opened our eyes to potentially getting more involved in this topic as exercise scientists. Typically, we're like, my background's exercise physiology, so this is more broad. Then a couple years later, he came to the city of Fairfield. Myself, another faculty member, joined the activities, which included a presentation to a diverse group of people. I remember the chief of police was there, the fire chief was there, representative from education, transportation were there. So we had a lengthy discussion after his presentation, and then he led us on some walkability audits in the city of Fairfield. And similar to Norwalk, you know, some of these assessments led to some progress, especially in popular areas similar to Norwalk, again, like near our beaches. So that is kind of some background as to how we became interested in this topic. So then moving forward to 2017, I've been working for years with the Healthy for Life project in Norwalk, and a lot of the iterations. So sometimes these groups and committees changed names, but you know, I've always been interested in promoting physical activity and good nutrition in our community. We've been working on programs with area schools like the Fit Kids program. So this was a collaborative project that was presented at an annual conference a few years ago. I don't know if anyone remembers this area near Wendy's Hamburgers on the Post Road, but this trail is actually, you know, formed by humans, but a common term in built environment studies is this would be a goat trail formed by humans, but if you installed a sidewalk there, people would come. And that is in fact what happened. The sidewalk is installed and we saw people continue to walk, but now in a much safer environment. So I took this topic on as something to focus on. Maybe if communities identified these goat trails, they would be easy targets for installing sidewalks or maybe bike paths. I remember standing in front of my poster at the conference, and it was such an easy discussion to have with individuals, because I said, all right, just picture yourself in your town. You know this trail that, you know, you drive by, you worry about people, they've got their baby strollers, and everybody was recalling, you know, a specific area that they were now going back home to their communities and thinking about maybe getting them on a priority list for an installation of a sidewalk. We were also introducing the CDC walkability audit tool at this conference, and we did collect some data, just a sample of our data. We did find a small positive correlation between the length of these goat trails and the overall walkability scores. The walkability scores for our audit, the higher the score, the worse the safety and other variables related to built environment, including aesthetics, shade, things have been mentioned earlier today. Those are all part of this kind of on the ground walkability audit. So that happened in 2017. Well, one of the courses I teach is the behavioral aspects of physical activity. So it allows me to bring the built environment into the course. So we go over that for at least a week. And then we conduct a walkability audit of a walking route that faculty, staff, and students use. It's just a quick 20-minute walk. We have a walking group that walks every day at noon. So we selected that route. We invited everybody who participates in the walking group to join us. And I taught the students about how to conduct a walkability audit. Among my objectives were to show students how kind of potentially easy some of these things can be, and how obvious a walkable area can be versus something that, you know, is presenting danger to people that are trying to use, you know, a sidewalk that just, you know, cuts off. So I also routinely collect data on the observations of the students to further prove that, you know, you don't have to specifically train people to do these audits. The confidence intervals for my 3 out of my 4 areas that I've selected appropriately are adequately narrow. But then I have a area of the walk number 4, which I think is a textbook example of like the best attributes of a walkable area and the worst attributes right after. What is consistent with some of the things that happen is you might have a new organization or building move into an area. They make their sidewalk perfect. They install, attractive lampposts and benches, and then the person's just kind of dropped off a ledge. And in our case, they definitely are. You walk from a beautiful sidewalk with a nice buffer into like a muddy trail with garbage on it. So it's just an interesting exercise for the students. And we emphasize with this area number 4 that if we've got 2 disparate areas, this point was brought up before too in our first presentation, you need to subdivide that. So you're not looking at 2 very, very different things. So this is just a slide from one of my class lectures. When we come back after the audit, I've collected some data and we just have more discussions about doing this type of activity. And then I had a student come up to me after that walkability audit. She said, I am really interested in this topic, especially as it relates to my future as an occupational therapist. She's interested in being an occupational therapist. And she's interested in the future and looking at the types of injuries that people suffer, when they're involved in these types of crashes. So at the same time, I found out about the Yukon crash repository. Tanner, you turned me on to that. So I checked it out, and hours later, because it can be kind of addicting. It's a very, very interesting database and tool to use, especially when you can go into specific towns and specific areas. So I was her mentor and she embarked on a project. We did select Norwalk because we were able to help some of the work that the Norwalk Bike Walk Commission is doing, because I've become really interested in being a part of this group and what we're trying to achieve in our town. So some of the things that were a take-home message from her project was that we both did this simultaneously to make sure we were doing it accurately. We did identify problematic areas, and then I live in Norwalk. I didn't make her come down to take photos, but I would take photos of these areas. And what I noticed from being a longtime resident is that these crashes, a lot of them took place before some adaptations were made. And that's what made me think about how important it is to combine something like a crash repository database with, all right, well, how is this intersection now? Or what's this location like now? Is this still like a top priority for a community? So that's something that this collaborative project made me think about. So I wanted to continue with the project. I do have an image here from the repository website. And I did zero in on Norwalk. It's a very visual tool as well, with these blobs depicting areas of concern. And when you zoom into them, you can find out all kinds of details about the crash. Was a pedestrian involved? Was a bike involved? Was a bus involved? The severity of the injury. It's just a very, very interesting tool for me to be learning more about. And then combining that with a walkability audit tool. And I just have a couple of features from the CDC walkability audit tool. The topics are divided into high importance, medium importance, and low importance. So they're weighted. So I have examples of topics from each of those categories. So the presence of sidewalks, that would be an example of a high importance topic. If we shift over to low importance topics, how things look, is it attractive? Is there shade? So points are attributed to that as well. I thought it might be interesting to continue this type of work or this research using these combination of tools. So an example audit location, because Tanner suggested, the Bike Walk Commission suggested that we look at what's happening on East Avenue. So that's what we did do. And we found that there were 3 crashes that involved cyclists on the roundabout on the way to the beach as East Avenue, continues towards the beach. And like I said, when I went to take photos, I just found it interesting that, to me, compared to 15 years ago, this area looked safer for bikes and pedestrians compared to when some of these accidents took place. So that was something that I've already mentioned before that I wanted to highlight. And of course, we don't want to exclusively use the walkability audit tool. audit tool. There are additionally some bikeability checklists and audit tools that could be combined if a small group of interested people went and visited some of these sites. So this has culminated into an abstract that I have sent to an international conference. The gist of this abstract is the utility or the, maybe optimization of a combination of tools, one digital, one more analog, where you're just visiting the site and looking at and evaluating it objectively and subjectively. Could this be a way to, further identify high priority sites for some of these adaptations in communities? So the abstract has been sent to the World Sustainable Built Environment Conference, which is going to take place in June. I will be notified if the abstract is accepted in October. But I haven't done a ton of additional development on this project because of my meetings with you all that I've been privy to. I know that there's a ton of expertise in this group, and I also don't want to be redundant in my research. If a contribution could be made, or if I could be advised to steer myself in a slightly different direction. So I did leave my abstract somewhat open-ended for the opportunity for the continued work to be more collaborative. And I'm also additionally open to additional authors on my abstract as well. So I'm open to collaboration for sure. But one thing that Tanner and I did discuss is a step moving forward, pun intended, could be us interested parties doing some of these walkability audits. They wouldn't take too long. We talked about maybe getting together in the months before things get cold, September or October, just scheduling a couple of audits at some of the areas that I've identified using the crash repository from UConn. So that's what I was excited to share with you tonight. And I'm just wondering what the interest is relative to getting involved in something like this. In the past, when I introduced myself to you all before, I'm also interested in students getting involved in some of the work that's being done here, interns, just looking to help with the things that, we all find to be a priority in Norwalk. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Wendy. I want to take just a small step back and make sure that TMP is part of this conversation. In particular, because I think that compared to maybe when you last were active with the Bike Walk Commission, TMP and also consultants that TMP is managing have been doing a lot of similar work. They've been doing walk audits. We have a draft transportation master plan, which included a lot of data analysis about crashes. I believe, Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that there's some work ongoing right now in your department about crash data analysis.
Yes, there is, and we have a similar toolkit that our traffic analyst Kyle Benjamin has been putting together, and we've run annually with the with the crash data repository from State DOT, and we also utilize the Norwalk Police Department as well, and the crash reports that they have, because they're the ones that actually generate those reports inside of the crash data repository. So it actually starts there. So we work very closely with the police department, and we kind of we put our own toolkit together and analyze it similarly that you did, Dr. Berkey. And I do have one question for you, Dr. Berkey. Did with the numbers that you got for your abstract, was crashes that occurred on like 95, Route 7, and the Merritt Parkway also considered?
No, the focus of my students' initial presentation were crashes that involve pedestrians and bikes. So those are not going to happen on 95 or
well, yeah, because we have seen some crashes that did occur on 95, so they did count them as a pedestrian. If somebody was on the side of the highway,
yes,
changing a tire or walking along the road for one reason or another, and if they were hit, they did count under the pedestrian category.
Yes,
Kyle actually went through.
Yeah, now I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And we zoomed very close in because I saw that. I saw that there were crashes that identified a pedestrian. And just
Yeah.
intuitively, I was like, oh, they were on the side of the road, and that was the situation. So they were not counted.
Okay, yeah, because then we also saw like Kyle actually took a lot of time, and it's anyone who's been on the repository, it's pretty painstaking to look through every single diagram on every single crash.
Yep.
He did a lot of that heavy lifting and looked through and cleaned up a lot of the even unknowns that came up, because a lot of the times, you know, the crash type was unknown or other, which, you know, kind of misses through that filter. You know, if you're just looking for PED. So he actually went through and looked at through all those diagrams and kind of cleaned up the data that way as well. But no, we do have our own toolkit that we look at from crashes, and you know how we look at bike and PED and other vulnerable users going back all the way to 2015, and kind of pulling that data between the repository and the Norwalk Police Department as well.
And yeah, I would also add, I'm not an expert in the built environment. It is definitely, you know, a broader interest. My primary background's more in physiology. So I would definitely defer to someone in your department who's gone through this with a more trained eye.
So it sounds like, Dr. Berkey, that your focus, at least with this abstract that you've written, is to introduce the academic community, kind of to make the point, that an evidence-based point to the academic community, that combining this one data source of crash repository with a different data source of like in situ walkability audits, that brings additional value. But it sounds like that idea is not foreign to the public sector, to the work that Greg's department is doing. Is that fair, Greg?
Correct. Yeah, and like I said, like we compare it to other municipalities. We look at it from the state at a state level as well. You know, right now the state is seeing obviously an uptick in pedestrian crashes, where our numbers have kind of, you know, been below that. You know, obviously it's too many. You know, obviously, and we're trying to reduce that. But we're just looking at it. You know, our numbers. You know, we haven't decreased. We haven't made a.
Well,
you know, as
Greg,
much.
I'm asking specifically about walk audits. I know that you've done quite a bit of work, and there's still ongoing work about analyzing the data that's in the crash repository, maybe augmenting it with additional metadata from the police department, because that's where it comes from. But to what extent have you taken that data and combined it with walk audits that either you've done or that a consultant's done?
Well, I mean, we take that into account. Like, for instance, the walk, you know, we're doing on Thursday. You know, that is a detailed walk audit. You know, so part of the Complete Streets you know, an implementation guide, and even that we did with the master plan as well last year. You know, a lot of that took into account a lot of data and walk audits as well. That kind of combined efforts on that level.
Is that data that it's publicly accessible or that could be made publicly accessible? That, like, I'm thinking particularly like larger scale walk audit data, like, you know, dozens, on the order of tens or dozens of audits. If they were done, if that data was standardized, that could be shared, that could save Dr. Berkey a lot of work. Am I understanding that right, Dr. Berkey?
Yes, and also we all know that the timing of these audits is a factor.
Of course.
Because things change at these intersections and these locations. And that's what, like I said, what sparked the idea. I was like, oh, here's this high priority area with all this activity relative to crashes. And then I visit it and I go, oh, it doesn't look quite as bad as I expected. So yeah, the dates end up being key.
Yeah, what I'm driving at here though is that the idea that you and I got when we discussed one-on-one was that you in conjunction with the Bike Walk Commission could do several more of these walk audits so that you then had data that you could use in the paper or in the abstract. But if there's data that's already been collected, perhaps by TMP, or if there's walk audits, I don't want to, just like you mentioned earlier, I don't want to duplicate work. And in particular, I want to have respect for the work that TMP is doing.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I would be fully interested in looking at any walk audit data that is available.
So Greg, I'm just throwing that out there. I think that if the best step forward is to go do some more audits that Dr. Berkey and maybe some members of the commission or other members of the public do, that's great. But if doing so is either duplicating effort that the TMP or the consultants have already done, or if it's stepping on toes, I don't want to do it.
Well, I mean, so like, for instance, we're doing a Route 1 corridor study.
Yep.
That we've already kicked off. That's gonna, that's gonna do all from Van Buren all the way Connecticut Avenue to the Darien line. We got funding for an East Avenue comprehensive study as well, which obviously has been, you guys advocated for as part of the commission. So, we're gonna look to, hire through a competitive bid process, hire a well-established engineering consulting firm to do that, to kind of perform that study. We have to look back and see, when these were done, and, I'm not saying we don't want to do it. It's just more of when was it done? Like, the built environment has changed a lot in some areas. So, when it was done, if it was done 2 or 3 years ago, it could be much different now.
Yeah.
And as Dr. Berkey alluded to, the time of year, when it was done and how it was done as well.
Totally. I guess I'm really saying two things. One is, if there's any data that we or Dr. Berkey could get her hands on, I think we'd love to. And then number two is, we'd love to know to what extent would it be stepping on TMP's toes if we scheduled a handful of walk audits that we did. Obviously, you guys would be invited.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to ask the consultant to see what they have and what they did, when it was done, the master plan. But we're kind of looking more for the future as far as, we're gonna go along with, an engineering consulting firm that's gonna do that work to
Totally.
to go through a comprehensive study, because that's our best option to get funding.
And as you should be, right?
Yeah.
Because the purposes are slightly different here. I'm trying to figure out whether the purposes that have already been served of the town can also serve the purposes of academic research. And if not, if the Bike Walk Commission can go collaborate.
I mean, I can inquire about it and see what they have and what was done previously, but there was a lot of significant work that was done. For instance, even like Stewart at Stevens, we just applied for that grant, the community connectivity grant.
Yeah.
You guys signed up for that. Obviously, that area that needed a lot of, it didn't leave a lot for the pedestrian accessibility for the pedestrian and connectivity for the pedestrian. So, that was another project that we, looked at and studied and, put in for a grant to see if we can get some funding to improve that intersection.
Yeah, I bet that there's a lot of different projects that maybe could be amalgamated together into potentially a data set. But Christine's got her hand up for a while. Go ahead, Christine.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation, and Greg. I guess I think this could be a wonderful partnership. And Greg, I think it would be wonderful that one of the commissioners or some of the commissioners is involved, like, ongoing with these walk audits. Like, I think it's a perfect partnership relationship that we have. And I don't see it as stepping on toes. I would think it would be welcome, just because we're volunteers and stuff, and you know what I mean? And you have.
And they will be, like, Tanner and yourself, you guys are, going to be coming for the Complete Streets one.
Yeah.
Please-
So if we can get, I just want to finish before I forget.
Yeah.
If we can get like, if we had the list of what's been done, and then where because I was on one the other day and I have a little spot that I'm concerned about, but I'll do it with the click and request. I think I'll put in my concern on that, the click and request. I don't know, but or email you. But the other thing is, if we have us working together in collaboration, this can make a robust application like that we want to do with the bike friendly, walk friendly, application that we have to do with the League of American Bicyclists. And that's on the agenda, but it wasn't the membership. It was actually that application where we're at with that. But
Yeah.
so I think it would bolster our work. And if we can document how the city has fixed these issues, that were magnified in the documented in the crash data repository. So I just think it's a perfect partnership, frankly, and I look forward to participating if I can.
So from like the city's perspective, we're looking to do these walk audits to apply for grants in order to implement these improvements. So I understand where we're coming from, where we want to go out, from a research perspective to look at this, but from the city's perspective, a grant funder, for whether it's FHWA, DOT, they're not just going to look at research that was done they want to look at if it was a comprehensive study from a, an experienced engineering design firm such as FHI.
Yeah,
or the-
Greg, we're not suggesting that the academic research would then be used necessarily for the stuff that the city's doing. The relationship's kind of in the other direction. We're wondering if TMP would be okay with us going off and collecting our own data, or if there's data that you have that you would be willing to
That's
share.
fine.
Either
No,
one
I
would
mean,
be
no one's
fine.
stopping you guys from catching data. That's not, I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying from the city's perspective, what we're committed to is implementing improvements and getting grant funding to implement those improvements.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And I'm all open for sharing what we have. I don't know, what was done as part of the master plan process 2 or 3 years ago, because it was a 2-year process to do all that. I don't know what exactly they may have, but from a city perspective and from a TMP departmental perspective, we're looking to do these corridor studies and put our investment into those engineering consulting firms that are going to, actually provide us documents, get public input as well, which is a big, portion of those of getting that grant funding for projects. So that's where we're going to kind of put our investment and our availability into.
That makes total sense to me. Christine, do you still have a follow-up question?
One last thing, thank you, Greg, and I think if I'm understanding that in collaboration with community organizations is usually part of a grant application and
Correct.
bolsters the application. So that's
Correct.
kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, no, and we always, anything we've done, whether it's Seaview Avenue, Wall Street, we, before applying for any grant money, we've always gone out to get public support before even applying for any grants, so that we have public input and private and public stakeholder input.
Greg, I think the point Christine's trying to make is that if we could spin up this sort of a collaboration between, say, the Bike Walk Commission and an academic researcher, that could be additional evidence that you could use in a grant application that the atmosphere in Norwalk is welcoming to this kind of work.
That's fine. No, if you guys want to do that, that's, if you want to take that on, that's fine. That just adds another layer to a grant application.
Great. Okay. I think we're all on the same page then. Let's talk. Dr. Berkey, do you have any particular locations that are high on your priority list if we were to do, let's say, a first walk audit together?
Given the fact that for the students' research project, we were kind of steered in the direction of East Avenue.
Mhm.
I would suggest that I go back to broaden the scope a little bit for the whole city of Norwalk and identify like the top 10 areas for pedestrian and bike incidents, from 2015, and prioritize those, because we picked East Avenue kind of based on your recommendation, which is
There was
totally
a lot of
fine.
public
I know.
groundswell at the time talking about East Avenue. That was the
Yeah,
reason.
definitely. But another alternative could be to look at the whole town and see if there's like a top 5 or a top 10 list. Probably top
Yeah.
5, because there's not going to be that many opportunities to hold like a group walkability audit, before I need to put something larger together.
So, and you're thinking that deadline would be sometime around the end of the warm weather, maybe October.
I think it'd be appropriate to do it during the warmer weather, because we attract more interest, if they
Totally.
want. Because for me, like, just exposing people that, for example, walk by and are like, hey, what are you doing? We're doing a walkability audit. Like, for me,
Totally.
I'm interested in a lot of these just little things, like raising awareness, getting students involved. And
I agree.
I definitely I'm just interested in this topic and want to help in any way I can. And my fear as a researcher, I never want to be redundant, if something's already been done, especially by experts. So, I want to emphasize that I want to help with these things and not anything else.
Well, what I would propose is that we, between you and me and other commissioners or members of the public that are interested, that we set a goal to do at least one of these before the next Bike Walk Commission meeting. We come back and report on it, and then based on the success or lack thereof, we plan some more between the September meeting and the October meeting. How does that sound?
That sounds good. And I will run a location by you and my rationale for choosing that. There'll be other factors that I'm considering, like how safe is it for people to join us on an assessment like that. But yeah, let's just do that and see what kind of interest we generate.
Okay, in the interest of time, I think let's move the discussion about when and where to do this first one offline.
Yeah, sure.
But just by show of hands, who on this call would be interested in being included in that discussion, in the discussion of where and when we do the first walkability audit? Ben, Christine, Emily, Nick. Awesome. Okay, let me take note of that, and then I'll start that conversation because I have contact info for everybody. That was Ben H, Emily, Nick Pappas, and Christine. Okay, walk audit working group. Great, okay. Brian, I'll add you to the list as well, or do you have a comment? I've added you to the list. Great. Let's move on. We've got 2 minutes left and certainly more than 2 minutes of content, but we will do our best. Appreciate everybody participating in that discussion. I'm excited about being involved with the academic community, and also I think it's a like I think Christine and like Wendy mentioned, it's an opportunity to foster a lot of public participation as well, which I love. I think we all do. So I'm going to turn the time to Greg for TMP updates. We got 3: Fox Run, Union Park Crosswalk, and other pavement markings.
All right, so we'll run through these quick. So the Fox Run sidewalk project has already begun. Construction crews are already out there. We're putting improving the sidewalk at the frontage of Fox Run School on Fuller Street, adding an amenity grass strip amenity area, narrowing the road a little bit, and just lessening the amount of pavement there. And we'll look to plant some street trees in there as well, and just create a little bit of a space between the pedestrian and the roadway as well, which is, obviously in front of a school. So it's kind of our, next Safe Routes to School project that we're looking to do. So we'll run between Fox Run and Richards Avenue there and improve that stretch of sidewalk, which right now is just asphalt sidewalk and asphalt curb right now. So it doesn't really leave much, and there is a lot of vehicles that travel through here, especially in the morning hours. And then, once school starts up, obviously. So we're looking to get this completed just before school starts.
Oh, so pretty soon then, like within the month.
Yep. No, our goal is to get it done before school starts. So
Great.
that's our goal. And then once that's completed, DPW, it's on their list to pave either late this year or early next year, this portion of Fuller Street.
Cool.
So as you can see, it's a pattern where we do sidewalk work is in conjunction with the paving program, so that once sidewalk work is completed, then the road gets paved.
And when did you say paving is slated to be done?
Either late this year or early in the spring next year.
Okay. All right, next.
Next, Union Park Race Crosswalk. So once the crew is done on Fuller Street, we're looking to have the raised crosswalk between the NRVT. It'll be a 6-inch raised crosswalk, so there will not be any ramps. It'll just be a smooth transition between the sidewalk to the raised crosswalk to the other side of the NRVT. We're working with some of the drainage updates to accommodate it. So we will be implementing the raised crosswalk and also putting in some decorative crosswalk treatments as well for the tapers of the raised crosswalk. So that, a little different, for a little different eye for the vehicle, so they know that it's a different surface and a different elevation as you approach the intersection. So we're looking to kind of improve the pavement as well, the asphalt on the NRVT as well as you approach the intersection and with the raised crosswalk. So we're looking forward to putting this in. And, this is a partnership as well with the health department as well. They were awarded a grant for this crosswalk. So
Really?
We've been working closely with them, kind of handling the design and construction of it. you know, as they were awarded a portion of the cost. So big thank you to the health department as well.
And
that
if
part of
my
that.
memory serves me right, some of the cost for this is also being paid out of that on-call concrete contract?
It's also, both of these projects are part of the on-call construction services.
Great. So glad we got.
Sidewalk on Phyllis Street and this project as well.
You mentioned that this will include a little bit of improvements to the NRVT kind of in the immediate vicinity of the project.
In the
How-
immediate vicinity, yeah. Yep.
How immediate? Do you know, like?
So
10 feet,
within,
like 100 feet?
yeah, it's within 50 to 100 feet. It depends on the size. You know, there's some poor condition of the asphalt as you approach. the
Yeah,
intersection.
I've actually taken videos and sent them to Jim before about the quality of the paving here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we've been out there early in the morning and, you know, we have seen, you know, we've seen a good amount of users of the trail, especially on a weekday morning. You know, so we definitely, you know, while we're there, we definitely want to improve the overall quality of the NRVT as well as you approach the intersection.
Great. And then, did you mention a timeline for this work?
So as soon as Phyllis Street is done, we're looking to begin work there as well. Right after Phil is done, so probably early mid-September.
Yeah, Phyllis Street is the Fox Run School sidewalk that you were talking about. Just to make
Correct.
it-
Yep. Yep. It's the
Okay,
same
cool.
crew as part of the concrete services.
Great news. All right.
Yep,
Any
and
other
also-
questions?
Oh, and
Right.
one more thing. There's also, we'll be putting up RFBs as well, the rapid flashing beacons.
Ah, okay, cool. I obviously, this is very welcome development. I regret that it's like, if you're correct about the timing of it, it'll be about 1 month too late to include in the bicycle friendly communities application, because that's due at the end of August, and there's a specific category for raised crosswalks on shared use paths like this. But of course, we'll be able to include it in future applications, and we'll also get partial credit for it being in progress, so.
Yep.
Better late than never.
Yep.
Excellent. Other questions about this, or should we move on? Let's move on.
All right, and then
Paving
other
and
thing, so, yeah, paved markings and signage. So obviously, you know, part of DPW's paving program, they did pave, you know, a significant amount of mileage and roadways this year. So we are going through, you know, with our striping vendor and laying out a lot of the roads coming up, you know, this summer. So we have Highland Avenue, which was just paved, where we'll be putting in bike lanes and 10-foot travel lanes. We're going to be doing West Rocks Road, where we widened that portion between Creeping Hemlock and Bain Street, or where we'll be putting in bike lanes. Bain Street will see bike lanes and 10-foot travel lanes as well. Aiken Street just got paved. It had bike lanes before, but we'll be refreshing those. And as well as Richards Avenue from Route 1 to West Cedar. As you all remember, that was part of the community connectivity. So, you know, we waited until that was repaved to stripe Richards Avenue. So that will be upcoming. And we also incorporated a little bit of a road diet as well, where we actually installed, we worked with, you know, big thanks to the DPW and, you know, and their contractor who put in a sidewalk as well. That's adjacent to the Walmart parking lot there, where there was no sidewalk before.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
we now have a sidewalk connection from Route 1 all the way up to West Cedar along the easterly curbside.
Now we just need some crosswalks across Route 1.
Well,
Obviously,
that will
will
be
take time.
in time, but that's in the works right now. So, but yeah, if you drop just north of the driveway, Tanner. So we bumped out the road there, eliminated the parking, and have a sidewalk along the tree line there. And if you spin the other way,
All this?
yep, that's all new sidewalk. And then as well, along that curb line right there, that is also new sidewalk. That's there right now. That was built earlier
This
this
has
year.
been refreshed.
Well, no, it's built off of that and then just
Oh, okay.
continued. And there is a
That's
bus
right here.
stop there as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this bus stop finally, I've actually gotten off of that bus stop before.
Yep,
And,
Yeah, as you can
noticed
see,
there's
as you can see the goat track that's there.
Yes,
So
the
that
goat
is
track.
now a concrete sidewalk. And the
Oh, that's
community,
great news.
yeah, and then the community connectivity project as well. I don't know if y'all have seen the brand new green and red pavement that has been installed on 4 Point Street. We'll, You know, the contractor will be, our vendor, striping vendor will be coming to put in the white epoxy that goes along with it and finish striping the rest of the community connectivity grant project, which has been in the works for some years now. So we're very excited to see it implemented and you know, near its completion in the coming
Sure. I've got some pictures. So you're saying that we're gonna get like white outlines and then also symbolage.
Correct. Yep, so symbols, epoxy white on the outside there, and then bus only lettering inside the bus stop there. And yeah, and the bike lane and Cheryl symbols, so. We're,
Do you know, is it under TMP or is it under NTD to actually take the bus stop and move it? Because I think this isn't actually a bus stop right now.
So we coordinated with the transit district and moved the bus stop to that location. The
Oh, it's already
sign-
been moved.
the sign is there right now, yep.
Oh, great.
So we,
On top of it.
yeah, because then we then added more parking where the old bus stop was, because there's parking just to the other side of the driveway there. So we
Gotcha.
created a far side bus stop of that
It-
intersection.
It was actually, it was the stop that was up here, right? That's being moved down.
A little just north of the catch basin there.
Yes, right here. I see.
Yep.
Okay. Well, that was a whirlwind. You mentioned Highland Avenue, you mentioned West Rocks, you mentioned Bain, Aiken, and Richards. Did I get that right?
Yep, correct. On top of all the other bike lanes that are going up as part of the community connectivity.
Yeah, I noticed in particular, for example, I noticed striping on Richards Ave south of Route 1.
Yep,
Or at least I've noticed like spray paint that's been put down. in
it's
advance.
layout, yeah, so they come and lay everything out before they do epoxy.
But the 5 that you mentioned, those are already done, right? Or those projects in.
Those are in they will be done because they were just recently paved.
Gotcha. So that's striping that's in the works.
That striping that's in the works, yep.
Okay. Any follow-up questions from the commission about this this recent work? Paul, go ahead.
First, I would like to say good job. I know it's a lot of work, so I really appreciate it. Loving the bike lanes. I'll ride them.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Let's move on. We got commission discussion items that I think that we can get through pretty quick. The first one is the League of American Bicyclists. And Christine, you mentioned that your agenda item wasn't about the membership, but about the application. And I do have an update because Ben Hanpeter and I have been working on it. I'll go right ahead with that. We've got, I'll pull it up here really quick. Oops. So I believe I presented this last week or last month or maybe the month before. There was a meeting, Christine, that you weren't able to make where I presented this, but because we've made some progress since then, and also because you weren't there, I'll highlight it really quick. Ben and I have been going through, and we've got help from a couple other people as well, including Paul, who's on the call, going through, and Anthony as well, who's on the call, going through every single question on the application and noting the things that we have already that would count for it. We have things that are in progress that could count for it. For example, we've got the zoning code that's going through revision right now. We've also taken the opportunity to write down a bunch of stuff that we don't have, but that the application kind of teaches us about, or items that are called out on the application that would be awesome to see in Norwalk but we don't have. And that's what I put on the wish list. Stuff that could be included, for example, in the Complete Streets project I've highlighted in green. So my point is that we've put a lot of detail into this. Most of the detail is in this first section, which is the section on engineering, both because that's the biggest section of the application, also because that's where a lot of the work that's ongoing right now, the TMP is doing, that's where it lives. But we've got engineering, we've got education, which we have a lot fewer things to get credit for. Some of the stuff that the Bike Walk Commission does, we can get credit for here. Encouragement, we've also got not as much there, but still some. And then there's 2 sections remaining: evaluation planning and equity and accessibility, that Ben and I are going to be going through this week. I think, Ben, did you say you wanted to meet on Tuesday?
I can meet after this.
You can meet after this. All right, let's roll. Anyway, point is that we've made a lot of progress and we've identified some action items for TMP that we've sent over to them already. The biggest one is the summary of the bicycle network, which involves querying the city's massive GIS repository. a task that TMP is much more well suited to than you or I. So we've got some action items, and then also updating the official bike map. So I think we tossed those action items over to you, Greg, last week or maybe the week before. Do you have any updates on those?
Yeah, so I mean, we're working through those right now, and then, when you guys are, if you guys can get your stuff, filled out and sent to us. I know Kyle sent an email last week to you guys.
Yeah.
So if you can just continue to go through this, and then we'll handle our part, and this way we make that August 30th deadline.
Great. Okay. Christine, does that answer your question?
Yeah, very exciting. And I just realized, I could have accessed this information on the Google Doc that was shared with me last year. Just wanted to make sure that our membership then, that is on the agenda. So I guess it is an agenda item, just our membership, our city membership that we had with Mike Yosak, always renewing it, is active, because I don't know if that's a requirement, but it would probably be in our favor to make sure we have an active application.
Sure.
Membership.
That's come up multiple times in the past, and I think at times I've said that what we need to do is just have somebody on the commission pay for it and get it reimbursed. It's $75 a year, so it's kind of a nominal fee as far as we're concerned. But you're saying that in the past, Mike Yosak was the one who took care of that?
Yeah, we had an organizational membership. I'm an active member, so I have my own.
Yeah,
membership.
no, I'm talking about an organizational membership.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, we always had that. It was in the budget item. It was in.
But
last.
since I've never gone through that process, I'm not sure if it makes more sense for a commissioner to apply for, to register on behalf of the commission or for the city. Given that in the past, it was somebody from the city who did it, I'm wondering, Greg, if you or maybe Kyle are best positioned to take care of that, just purely to register the commission as a, or no, is it the commission or is it the city? It's the commission.
I'll have to see.
It came out of the commission's budget, so I think it was the commission, but Greg, I'll send you some of the correspondence Mike and I had over the years about that, if that could help.
Okay, yeah, if you could, because I don't,
I-
I did that, and I don't know if he had his own login, or, I'm not sure what he had. So yeah, if you can look back at that, Christine, that would be a big help.
Okay, but Christine, can I assign that to you to either take care of that or to have Greg take care of it? We voted to spend the money in the past. I think we voted multiple times to spend that money. We just never actually spent it.
Yep, I'll take care of it.
Okay,
And congratulations, and great job, and Greg, great work on those other projects. Fantastic.
Thank you, Christine.
awesome. Next agenda item is e-bikes. Christine, you put this on the agenda, and then
Yeah,
the month
can
that
I-
you were gone, we did actually discuss it.
We don't have, you did, okay, maybe we can
Yeah.
bring it up next time, but anyway, I did, before we end this meeting. I mean, I think we've done this before, I don't know if it's appropriate, but we had another fatality in Norwalk last month.
We did. Oh, yes, it was a man on a scooter, right?
Yeah, it was Joseph Velez, 45 years old, on a moped,
On Van Buren Street?
yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to maybe have a moment of silence for Joseph, he was 45 years old, he died on July 22nd.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
Should we ask for that now or at the end?
Yeah, right. I'll go ahead. We'll take 30 seconds right now. Thanks, Christine, for bringing that up, for that reminder. The last item is the Bike Walk Commission budget. I have one item actually to bring up in this category. So I'll start with that. Nick, as I think all of you know, Nick Pappas is our most recent addition to the Bike Walk Commission. And in past years, we have talked about doing bicycle valets at different events in the summer, such as the Oyster Festival. And I gave that to Nick as kind of an assignment to pick up that item and run with it. And Nick has run with it. Part of what we would need in order to do this successfully is a decent bike rack. And actually, I'm pleased to report that over the last month, as I was traveling, I was able to use a bike valet. I was just this last weekend, I was in Indiana, and I visited the Indiana State Fair, and I've got a picture ready, actually. I had a picture ready. But there was a pretty big bike valet operation at the Indiana State Fair, and I was able to use it and also talk to the organizers. Here we go. So as you can see, they've got these kind of A-frame racks, and they had quite a big contingent of bikes there. The group is called Pedal and Park, and they actually provide bike valet services to like 30 or 40 different events around central Indiana every year, which I was very impressed by. So anyway, I connected with the guy who runs Pedal and Park, and I asked him in particular for connections to how to get these racks, because these disassemble and they pack up really compact. And I was thinking that if we are able to get a connection at the Oyster Festival or at the Pride Fest or at the Nice Festival or similar events, and start offering bike valet, that we'll need something like this. And I think that's a great way to spend the Bike Walk Commission's money. It's something that is durable, that we can use year after year, but also that the commission will actually use, in a hands-on way every year. So Nick, let me turn it to you in case you have other information about bike valet.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up, actually. So I got in contact with Mike Riley, who is the president of the Seaport Association and chairman of the Oyster Festival. And I actually spoke with him on the phone earlier today. And he asked about really two things that we should kind of get in order for us to have bike valet before we even start gathering volunteers and whatnot. The two things were insurance and actual bike racks. He mentioned that since we are appointed by the city of Norwalk, we should probably look into maybe a contact City Hall that might know more about having insurance that's through the city of Norwalk. Maybe Greg has more information on that. But also the bike racks, I'm glad you brought up putting that in as actual budget item, because I had the same idea in mind. I think it'd be a great thing to add to the budget to keep in our inventory.
Awesome. Yeah, I can, as far as insurance goes, the city has succeeded in getting us proof of insurance one time in the past, which is when we did the film screening several months ago. But I think that probably we need to go back to the event organizers and ask exactly what kind of insurance they need, or maybe what level, what amount. It could be that that because there's bicycles involved, which are make higher value property, that it might not suffice. But Greg, if you have any ideas here, any additional context?
Well, I would have to talk to our insurance guy, because obviously you guys are covered under the city's insurance because you are a commission. But as far as something like this, we just have to look at what it entails a little more in depth to know if you're still covered.
So do you think that's a conversation that needs to go next back to the Seaport Association or to city legal?
Well, I think through the city, the city insurance department, just to make sure that, just a description of what you're planning on doing, just so you're covered. And then I think after that would go to the association after that.
Gotcha. Okay. Nick, would you mind starting that chain then? Just maybe write up like a, I don't know, 3 or 4 sentence summary of exactly what this initiative would entail, so that Greg can forward that on to city legal and start that conversation.
Yeah, I can handle that.
Good. Does that sound good, Greg?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Paul, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I usually just build these things out of 2x4s and sawhorses. It's a cheaper alternative if you guys want to spend all that money.
I mean, I think as a temporary solution that would work well. I think the reason that the organization that I found here in Indianapolis does it the way they do is because they reuse them all the time. Like I said, they do dozens of events every year. But for this first event, I think that that would be a very quick and cheap solution that would be fine with me. All right, other items to propose for the budget. Christine.
So this is a little bit silly, but I don't know. I'll just throw it out there so you can laugh at me or whatever. And I don't know how much they are, but I ran this by Greg. A porta potty on the Norwalk River Valley Trail somewhere. Can we buy one? And can the city then service it? Just a suggestion. That we don't have to comment about it, but that's my suggestion.
I mean, I think at the very least, it speaks to a real need, which is, toilet infrastructure along the trail. It's a very reasonable request to have. I think in the long term, I'm sure that everyone would prefer a more durable solution than just a porta potty. Greg, has the idea or the problem of toilets along the trail ever come up within TMP?
Not to my knowledge, no.
If in the long term, if an actual bathroom structure was built somewhere along the trail, do you think that would fall under Parks and Rec, or would it fall under
It
TMP?
depends on where you're looking to put it. If you're putting it somewhere like Union Park, for instance, that's a city
for
park,
taxing
so
district.
that'd be Rec and Park. But yeah, it would all depend on where you're looking to put it.
Yeah.
As far as paying for, not that the city would maintain it, but you would have to hire the company to come in and,
Yeah,
clean
there's
up.
ongoing costs associated with it.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, that's a good point. Christine, do you have a particular spot along the trail you feel like it would be most needed at?
Yeah, I was thinking that parking lot by Wendy's,
The parking lot by Wendy's.
the new parking lot for the NRVT
Oh,
trail,
yeah, by Casatelli.
Casatelli, yeah.
Yeah.
There
Right
is no
now-
place to pee. There is no place to pee. I mean, you guys, a lot of guys here, you have no problem. It's a little different.
Yeah, point well taken. Greg, do you know what city agency that the land that parking lot is on falls under?
I would have to see who owns the property. I don't know if that's state or if it's city. That I couldn't tell
So
you.
it may not even be city property.
It may not be. We have to look and see, because it is along Riverside Ave, which is a state route.
Okay.
So we'll have to look and see who owns that property.
I think that this is something that's worth at least investigating. Christina, I appreciate you bringing it up. As Greg pointed out, there's the maintenance costs associated with it. And I have no idea, like, even what ballpark those costs are in, but I think that you speak to a real need. And the first step in addressing that need, I think, is nailing down exactly who is responsible for the land where either a temporary or a permanent solution would go in. So Greg, is that something you could take on? Just determining who the final, stakeholder is in doing anything on that land?
On that property, I mean, I'll inquire about it, but also it also, who's gonna take on the cost of maintaining it is another question.
Yeah.
Tanner, so I don't want to, what if I ask Nancy Rosette or Jim?
Christine, you muted yourself.
Oh, sorry, what if thank you, what if I ask Jim Carter or Nancy, so I don't put more on Greg right now? I can, because maybe they thought of it too, somebody must have thought about this.
Well, I imagine that Greg's best positioned to figure out who owns the land, or who's responsible for the land. Christine, if you could take on the task of estimating the costs, both the upfront cost of purchasing and also the ongoing maintenance costs, that's going to be critical in determining whether this is even feasible. I think that if it turned out to be something that was manageable under the Bike Walk Commission budget, I don't think that it's out of the question that it could come out of that budget, but we need to know the numbers first.
I'll bring it next time.
Okay, awesome. Let me make note of those action items. So Greg, you're cool to look into the land?
Yeah, I'll look in the land to see. I think it may be state, but let me double check on that.
Okay. Any other proposals? Paul, your hand's still up. Do you have another comment?
Oh, no, sorry.
Hey, Tanner, I just want,
Yep.
just real quick, I put this on the agenda only because we just want to avoid waiting it to the last hour, like we've done the
Absolutely.
last couple of years. So it's just high level. I mean, obviously, we're still in August, but I
Yeah.
just want to keep the conversation going so that we make sure, obviously, Judd, put in to buy the lights and everything. So we did spend some money there, but I just want to keep the conversation, every meeting that, always keeping that on your mind so that we.
Yeah, I
don't-
appreciate you doing that. It's well taken. I think also talking about it this early on also allows us to do things that are a little bit more involved, that require more lead time, right? We're never going to buy a porta potty in June. There's just not enough lead time. And we're probably not ever even gonna buy bike racks in June, of the kind that we've been talking about today. What was the item that we tried to buy at the end of the fiscal year and didn't make it? It was the locks and the lights, right? But those did get purchased and they came out of this fiscal year's budget.
So the PO's been created. We just have to actually put the order in now that the PO's been created and purchasing is signed off on the order.
Great. Okay, then I think that for this month, I think we're in a pretty good place in terms of budget planning.
Yep.
So if anyone disagrees, speak now. Otherwise, we'll move on to approving the minutes and then adjourning. Alrighty, then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting. Anybody want to move? I can't do it. Any commissioner out there?
I wasn't there, so I definitely can't.
I'll make a
That's
motion.
fair.
to approve
Thanks,
them.
Emily. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Nick. All in favor of approving the minutes from last month's meeting? Thanks, Christine, you're abstaining, I take it? Alrighty, then, I guess we don't have a quorum if you're abstaining, because we don't have Colin, we don't have Judd. But that's the best we can do this month, so if we need to return to it in a following month, then we will. Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Christine, Emily, seconds, all in favor? Thanks, everybody, for coming. Thanks, everybody from the public for coming as well. Greg, for staying with us. Have a great month. We'll see you all next month.
Thank you.